good day, folks. My name is Chris Gelwicks. I'm an attorney with the McIntosh Law Firm located in Davidson, North Carolina, just a little bit north of Charlotte. Coming to you in October on a crisp fall day. Fall reminds us of annual meetings. Those of us in this area of practice, managers and boards, most of your annual meetings occur in the last quarter of the year. So I thought it might be a good idea to spend these few minutes together just going over a couple of issues that I get questions on about annual meetings. This is certainly not going to be a complete long discussion about them because we could spend hours on any types of meetings, etc. But the annual meeting for homeowners, condominiums, and associations in North Carolina governed by three statutes: the North Carolina Nonprofit Corporation Act, the North Carolina Planned Community Act, and the North Carolina Condominium Act. Those statutes do play well together on some issues regarding meetings. One of those issues they play well together on is the requirement that you hold a meeting every year. That means annually. And you may chuckle at that, but I still get questions, generally from board members. How often do we have to hold our annual meeting? Well, that's every year, and that is required by statute in case anybody asks. And of course, your agenda at the annual meeting, the only real purpose of an annual meeting is to elect directors. One question we get is, it has to do with what time of year do we hold our annual meeting? Many bylaws, and this should be in the bylaws, maybe in the articles of incorporation, it should not be in your restrictive covenants, though I've seen it everywhere. But bylaws may sometimes contain language that require you to hold your annual meeting in a certain month or even on a certain day of the year. And the question I often get is, well, if we don't hold it on that date or in that month or even in that location, what is the effect of that? How does that affect corporate action taken from the time we were supposed to hold the annual meeting until we actually hold it? The example being, if your annual meeting is supposed to be held on November 1st and you hold it December 1st, what's the effect on corporate action taken over those 30 days? And the answer is nothing. The North Carolina Nonprofit Corporation Act specifically indicates that while the bylaws may require that a meeting be held at a certain date every year, the failure to hold it on that fixed date does not affect the validity of corporate action. So the board, if the meeting is not held at the date and times required by the bylaws, the board can continue to meet and make decisions and conduct business. This is not to say that you should not try to hold your meeting as close to that date as possible, but it does indicate that simply because you don't does not negate corporate action taken during the time between when it was supposed to be held and when it actually was. It is my opinion that boards have a fiduciary duty to comply with the bylaws, which includes holding the annual meeting when it's supposed to be held. But that does not mean that if you can't or aren't able to schedule it for whatever reason, and there are all kinds of reasons why you can't hold it on a certain date and time, the statute gives you an out on that. So keep that in mind. If you don't hold it on the date and time prescribed and members get upset about that, schedule it, get it held, and any action taken in the interim is simply valid, and we're good to go. Keep in mind too, questions I get a lot: you are not at an annual meeting electing a president or a secretary or a treasurer. Generally, these terms are confused between directors and officers. To be clear, the members elect the directors. The directors then appoint or elect officers. Now, in that vein, another question that I get is, well, a director's term is expiring at the annual meeting. Generally, directors serve from annual meeting until their term expires at whatever that annual meeting is, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year term, whatever the terms are. And at the expiration, there is a belief that they are no longer on the board. That's simply not the case. Directors serve until they are removed via election, or they resign, or if they unfortunately pass away. But simply because the annual meeting date comes and goes and they are still on the board does not mean anything. Further, if you have a director whose term is expiring and you hold your annual meeting, you call it to order and you don't have a quorum, or very common, we don't have any candidates to fill the departing director's position, what happens? If you don't have a quorum, or if you don't have any candidates, the director whose term is expiring continues to sit as a director until the next election, or he or she resigns. And as we know, if he or she resigns, the remaining board members will appoint to fill that position until, and that person will serve unless the bylaws say otherwise until the next election. Now, I've seen it at meetings where if we don't have a quorum, you can't obviously conduct business, no election. What do? The person whose term is expiring wants to get off the board. I don't blame them. What do? Well, at that point, you can take a poll of the assembly, the people that get the highest number of votes. The board could, if it chooses, but is not required to, choose among those candidates to fill the expiring director's position, assuming that director does resign. So, just to recap that, the expiration of the director's term means nothing except that their position is up for election at the annual meeting. And if there is no quorum or no candidates, that person remains unless they resign, and then the board appoints their replacement, who serve until the next annual meeting. I think my 5 minutes is up. I hope those points were helpful to you. Again, my name is Chris Gelwick with the McIntosh Law Firm. If you have any questions and want to reach out to me, you can contact me via email at chris@macintoshlawfirm.com. And I hope you all have a good annual meeting season. Thanks.